By the 119th chapter, everything started going well. Let's check out chapter 119, which is titled Baoyu's Success and Enlightenment. First of all, Baoyu had successfully met his family Jia's high expectation. Eventually, he got to take the exam, and not only did he pass, but he also achieved a high ranking. And guess what? Jia Lan also took the national exam and succeeded too. The second part of chapter 119, called By the Emperor's Grace, Jia family awarded continuance, tells us about how the emperor showed great kindness by declaring a general amnesty. Peace had recently been brought to the troubled coastal areas and made the emperor really happy. As part of the amnesty, many of the Jia family's wrongdoings were forgiven. Jia Shi and Jia Zhen returned, and the emperor even allowed them to keep their titles as the Duke of Ning and the Duke of Rome, respectively. So, the emperor really liked Baoyu's writings, but they couldn't find him. They searched everywhere, but no luck. Still, the emperor awarded him the title of advisor to the literary bureau. Later, this was talked about by Mr. Lu Sun. What was it called again? A slight revival towards the final ending. In the second half of this page, Jia Lan went to thank the grace of his emperor, and found out that Zhen Baoyu had also passed the exam. They all started reminiscing about their childhood and talked about Baoyu getting lost, which made everyone sigh. Then, it was mentioned that the exam papers of those who passed were presented to the emperor. The emperor personally read the essays and saw that Baoyu ranked 7th and Jia Lan ranked 130th. The emperor ordered an inquiry to see if these two people from Jinling with the surname Jia were related to the Jia consort. Ministers were called in, and Baoyu and Jia Lan were summoned for questioning. Jia Lan explained Baoyu's situation and presented evidence of their family history. The emperor was deeply sympathetic and ordered an investigation into Jia Shi's crimes. Around the same time, the emperor read a report about pacifying the coastal areas and improving the lives of the people. The emperor was delighted and ordered the ministers to discuss rewards and announced a general amnesty for the whole nation, and so on. Alright, Lord Jia Shi's charges were dropped, and Lord Jia Zhen not only received a pardon but also inherited the third-ranking position of Duke of Ning. The hereditary position of Duke of Rome was still passed down to Jia Zheng. When the mourning period for Jia Zheng's deceased mother is over, which is 3 years, he will be promoted to the position of Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Public Works. Jia Zheng's official position will be restored, and the confiscated family property will be fully returned, and so on. There's this theory going around that the latter 40 chapters were written that way because Emperor Qianlong, 18th century, wanted it that way. So, Dream of the Red Chamber was all the rage back then, right? But the government wasn't too keen on it and tried to ban it. But try as they might, they couldn't stop its circulation. So, Emperor Qianlong, being a smart cookie, thought, why not just change the ending to fit their own agenda? And that's where this guy Cheng Huayuan, a merchant, comes in. Apparently, he stumbled upon the original manuscript of those latter 40 chapters, even though it was all torn and scattered. Then they brought in this other writer called Gao Yi to finish it off. The guess is that this ending was written to please Emperor Qianlong. And honestly, it sounds pretty believable, doesn't it? That's why you'll find lots of praise and homage to the emperor in those chapters. And talking about wrapping up the Jia family story, characters like Baoyu finally get in the good books of the emperor, being hailed as a true literary genius. Pretty cool, huh? After we see how everyone's stories wrap up, including what happens to characters like Qiao Jia and Shiyin, the story takes us all the way back to where it began in the final chapter, 120. It's like we're coming full circle. We find ourselves back with the two characters who started the whole thing, Zhen Shiyin and Jia Yucun. It's a way for the author to bring everything together and give us a sense of closure and completion. Zhen Shiyin and Jia Yucun bumped into each other again. They had crossed paths once before. Back in the day, Jia Yucun was traveling and waiting to cross a river. But then, he spotted a cozy grassy spot and a cute little temple nearby. So, he thought, why not check it out? Inside, he found a couplet hanging on the wall. It said, "When there is enough I want more, when there is no way ahead I regret not stopping earlier." The couplet may have used simple language, but it had a deep meaning. It was the kind of thing only someone who had faced setbacks and survived would come up with. Jia Yucun walked in and saw someone chilling in meditation posture. And guess who it was? Zhen Shiyin, of course. So, they had a little chat. Zhen Shiyin kept his true identity a secret, and Jia Yucun couldn't say anything about it either. So, he had to leave. But just as he reached the riverbank, before even crossing it, that cute little temple went up in flames. It caught fire out of nowhere. Jia Yucun was all caught up in the hustle and bustle of the world, so he didn't have a second to look back. All he did was send a servant to check out what happened. The servant came back empty-handed, saying there was nothing left of the temple. That's how Jia Yucun was back then, charging ahead in pursuit of his own fame and success. Oh, look who's running into each other again. In the last part of the book, it says, Yucun gladly accepted the invitation and the two of them walked hand in hand. What's that all about? It means he met Zhen Shiyin. Jia Yucun got caught up in a corruption case, got tried and convicted, and now he's been granted a general amnesty, but he's been stripped of his official status and is now just a regular guy. His punishment is that he can't hold an official position anymore. Yucun told his family to go on ahead, and he brought a servant and a whole bunch of luggage, and they arrived at the Jiliu, rushing, river and the Jumi, enlightenment, ferry. These place names are pretty interesting, huh? Life's like a rushing river, isn't it? Ah. Now he's finally arrived at what kind of ferry? The Jumi ferry. This is where he should be enlightened and realize something. He bumped into Zhen Shiyin, and Yucun recognized him as Zhen Shiyin and quickly paid his respects. Shiyin said, "Mr. Jia, I hope you are well." Yucun said, "Sir, you are indeed the old Mr. Zhen. Why did you not recognize me when we met before? I had found out about the fire that burned down the temple, and I feel deeply fearful and regretful. Today, we are lucky to meet again, and humbly I stand before you, my true sage. I regret my past foolishness and am filled with remorse. It's only today that Jia Yucun truly regrets his actions." Alright, so these two look for a place to sit down, and they end up at this little thatched cottage, strolling along hand in hand. When they get to this straw hut, Shiyin tells Yucun to take a seat. Then a young servant brings in some tea, and the two of them start chatting. They go over all the stuff about the Jia family. Oh well, we can just skip over that. The only important thing they discussed was what Shiyin told Yucun. He confirmed that the jade was Baoyu's previous life. We find out in this part, before the Ning Rong Palace's crackdown, on the day of Daiyu's exit from Baochai's world, this jade had already disappeared. 1. To avoid trouble, and 2. To make a match. This explains the next 40 chapters, why the substitution plan was carried out and why it worked. Baoyu's jade went missing, and he was acting all crazy and confused. The loss of the jade was for 2 reasons. First, to avoid trouble from the authorities, right? Losing the jade could help avoid disaster. Second, once the jade was lost, Baoyu would naturally act crazy, right? Acting crazy was necessary for the substitution plan to work, and when it did, it was called making a match. From then on, Baoyu and Baochai were meant to be together, their forms and spirits becoming one. It was also suggested that the jade still had some kind of spiritual power. What kind of spiritual power? It was the power to produce outstanding offspring. What's that? It's Baoyu's posthumous child, which shows the extraordinary and mystical nature of this jade. After hearing all this, Jia Yucun is really sharp. So, let's skip a few lines and see. Jia Yucun asks another question. He asks the old sage, what about the Rong Palace and Ning Palace? Will they regain their former glory? Will they flourish like before? And Shiyin replies, well, the saying goes that fortune favors the virtuous and disaster befalls the wicked. This principle applies throughout history. In the current Rong and Ning palaces, good people will thrive and bad people will regret their actions. In the future, when everything falls back into place, the family's fortune will restore to its initial glory. It's just the natural order of things. But, this is something we can't easily accept. If people in Rong Palaka and Ning Palace have started to repent, then there would be a restoration of the family's fortune. Yucun thinks for a while and suddenly laughs, saying, "Ah, I get it now." In his mansion, there's someone named Lan who passed the local imperial examination. The character Lan perfectly fits with the phrase Lan Gui Qi Fang. And just earlier, the old sage mentioned Baoyu being an exceptional and noble son. Could it be that he has a secret child who will achieve great success? Shiyin smiles and says, that's a matter for the future, it's not appropriate to discuss it now. Yucun wants to ask more, but Shiyin doesn't answer. Instead, he instructs someone to set up a lavish meal and invites Yucun to dine together, enjoying the food in each other's company.